Abiatar there. Thank you for that. We'll come back to you a little later. Now, correspondent Emily Rose is there for us in Jerusalem. Emily, you were there when these first rockets were fired. You heard the bangs. What's the situation now?
It seems as though the situation now has continued as it was before. There was a bit of confusion. There's still a bit of confusion, honestly, about what's going to go on from here. Normally, as was planned originally, these marchers that you see around me, they were going to march, dance, sing. There was going to be a live performance that took them all the way past Damascus Gate and then up to the Western Wall. Then the plans changed to go past this gate where I'm standing, Jaffa Gate. That was going to be less contentious because there have been clashes, as you mentioned earlier in the broadcast, around Damascus Gate for days now. Now you can see that these marchers have continued singing and making their way towards the Western Wall. They're not doing it in an organized fashion, in a celebratory fashion, as was originally planned. It seems as though the police had said that the marching piece of this day was canceled, but now the marchers continued. They're singing, they're dancing, and they are making their way towards the Western Wall. In the evening are supposed to be ceremonies. There are going to be speeches by dignitaries and other public officials, celebrations, dancing. So there was lots of confusion right after that siren. We were right in the middle of it as it happened. Lots of confusion about what to do during it, but almost moments later, the crowd picked back up. Some of them started singing, dancing. They gathered what they had, and they continued walking towards the old city and made their way here to Jaffa Gate. And now we're going to continue with them pretty soon towards the Western Wall.
And, you know, these residents there in Jerusalem, they are not as used to these rocket alert sirens, you know, as people in the south, right, Emily?
Now, as we mentioned during the broadcast, as it was happening live, this is a very different scenario for the people of Jerusalem. For the people who live on the Gaza border, one could describe this perhaps as their daily or weekly reality. At certain periods during the year, they hear heavy rocket fire and go running to sirens pretty regularly. Even in cities that are close by, it's more normal. But this really did mark a shift, an uptick in the escalation and the violence that we see between Israel and Hamas. It was the first time, basically, since the last real confrontation between Israel and Hamas that we did hear rocket sirens in Jerusalem. It looks as though that launch landed just on the outskirts outside of Jerusalem near a community called Abu Ghosh. That's, at least from initial reports, didn't land exactly where we were standing in the city, but it sent many Jerusalem residents across the city and then communities around Jerusalem running to bomb shelters, something that is seen to be a daily reality sometimes for those people along the southern border. But here in Jerusalem, very new scenario, very different scenario, a sharp escalation, and yet the people around me, as you can see, they're continuing to march and they're going towards the Western Wall.
All right. Emily Rose there in Jerusalem, thank you very much. And let's bring our diplomatic correspondent Ellie Hockenberg back into the conversation. Ellie, we are hearing now some